So I think we're live. I think the sound is working. I think we have too few viewers, but that's something else. Today I'm here for the post-game analysis with Martin. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you for that short introduction. I am Martin and I play HOI. Let's
Let's analyze.
let's keep analyzing.
Okay, great. So we're 1939 and we wanted to start and take a quick look on the Pacific front. We have Japan in a bit of a struggle. I think this is the latest China war we had ever.
Yeah, it's even a rule-breaking late war China war, which for Japan is pretty terrible. A
Yeah.
late Japan war means both a very strong China and it means a significantly weaker Asian axis.
Yeah, I think no one was prepared for that. Neither the Axis allies or the players themselves on Japan's Goging and Sarge. I think they were hoping for an earlier war, but got lost in the focus tree.
Sometimes things happen, and we also want to remind people of this was a so-called Blitz game, which means that people have not been preparing that much for these games. They are quite often relatively new players playing on majors, so things like these are bound to happen, and it's part of the charm.
Yeah, no hard feelings at all. But this was the state of the Pacific, so hard time for the Asia axis. Uh, Back in Europe, I think we had a better time. We had a much bigger uh, enthusiasm on what was happening, except for the Japanese front. Uh, I We had a pretty quick war in Europe. France fell quickly. They had a garrison infantry build that couldn't really keep up with the German tanks. And I can't spell Germany. So
And for the people watching here, not using artillery in your divisions will make your soft attack stat very, very low, and this means you will not cause any damage and you will be pushed away.
yeah, didn't he even have any artillery?
I'm unsure. Let's check it.
Yeah, some artillery. Yeah, quite quite okay with artillery even, but it's
Yeah, yeah, that's a normal type of. It's heavy AA though. That's an interesting choice. Expensive choice, but not necessarily a bad one.
yeah. But France fell quickly. That's what happened when the war started. So, and I think the German tanks was the main thing that made that happen. So after that, we went down to El Alamein, and you had some interesting takes on what happened there and why we lost as Axis.
At this stage, you can't see it yet, but the railways are not built up at this stage, and they will not, before the Italy falls, ever be built to a level larger than 2, which
Yeah,
means the supply situation will be terrible throughout the entire conflict.
yeah, and it was. And one of the main plans here for us was to put a huge army down in Italy. We hid it at the beginning, so we had 800,000 troops here, ready to push out the UK here and march north as soon as we made a break in Alamein, which we never did.
Yeah, the Ethiopian front was surprisingly strong. It held, for the people new to the mod, there is a buff for a local supply in Ethiopia. For I think it's 6 months or so of the year, the
Yeah,
Italians get a huge buff to the supply situation. But when that disappears, the situation in Ethiopia is oftentimes not tenable.
yeah. And the main plan was to have the Japanese attacking in 6 months at the British Raj. So we, even though we didn't have the supplies, we should have been able to kick the UK out of El Alamein and gain supplies through the Suez channel. But as you see here, that didn't happen. And it was a Blitz game, so we said, fuck it, let's keep the troops and see what happens. So, and I also looked somewhat on the Navy here, because me as Italy built a lot of dockyards, and Germany also built some dockyards and heavy ships. So I would say in the naval game we were quite even, Germany, Italy compared to the UK. But I would say the UK had a better fleet, and that was evident down in the Mediterranean later on when we met up. Not extremely more advantage for the English fleet, but yeah, they still kill a lot more than I did.
The naval game is always a coin toss. When you have fleets of relatively close in size, it'll always be somewhat of a coin toss if the air levels are the same. We have got a question from our viewer.
Yeah,
A person called Sticky says that he played Italy last game and he felt it was a little bit of a trap to put too many troops in Ethiopia. And I agree with Sticky on this analysis. However, since Italy in this case had a clear plan of what they wanted to do with the Ethiopian troops, they wanted to keep the Indians there for long enough for the Japanese to come to the rescue. But since the let's call it the China situation happened, this would never materialize.
yeah, we should have backed off much sooner and just accepted that our plan wouldn't be able to uh, work this game.
Because I think that's a large amount of troops. Could it be like 400,000 men, perhaps, in Ethiopia?
I think it's like more kind of 800,000. We have 1.6 now, and if I delete them, 900. So yeah, 700,000 troops.
Yeah, that's a large amount of troops to have in Ethiopia.
Yeah, yeah, it was. So yeah, that didn't work. Do we have
However,
any?
it did. No, we have another comment from Sticky that he tried to do the same thing, but he had the same issue with the supply buff disappearing.
Yeah, yeah. You need to have it calculated. So when the supply buff goes away, you need Japan pushing from the other side, and you should have taken LL main by that point. If we done
It,
that, yeah, it would have worked.
another interesting take here is that Italy did manage to take and secure, not secure, but contest the strait into the Red Sea here,
Yeah.
which means that when Spain joins the war, the English will not have any supplies in the Mediterranean anymore.
Ah. Yeah. If it would have held, it would have been great.
Yes, that would have been a win for the Italians. I mean, it would have been a Mediterranean win.
Yeah. So we might see that again, or not. Depends on how people take this failure, this game, and which conclusions you can draw when you're trying to prepare for the next one. Yeah.
Okay, there's one more thing I wanted to look at before we move to the next year. It's the air situation. I'd like to compare the number of fighters from the English player compared to the German at this stage. At this stage, the German player should have a quite heavy advantage in the air due to the MIFO buffs and overall larger industry.
Yeah.
And they are at 1800, and I think they're another 400 in stockpile.
Yeah, and the
Also
production
1800.
of fighters was bigger from the English side. They were outpacing them in the production sense.
Yeah, at this stage, the English are indeed winning the air war, but we should talk about this as well because England went a very interesting build. It's pretty much pure support. He built dockyards and he used more or less all his military factories on airplanes.
Yeah.
It's a gamble because you can end up with way too little land troops, especially if you take a few hits in the beginning. But in this game, it definitely paid off. And I think we'll see when we go further into the years that the Allies did have a decisive air win this game.
Yeah. But as you say, we have very few troops defending El Alamein. Now there's a few months coming in, but when we came here, it wasn't that much more. It was the Indians who's reinforced mostly.
In Indeed, and we also have, which we'll see when we go into the next year, both the can. I'm actually unsure about the Canadians. They have very strong armor divisions, but especially the South Africans are not pennable by any division the Axis possess at this time.
Yeah, yeah, and it was the Canadians had great divisions all through the game, and South Africans too. So yeah, we had a struggle. We built way too little of armor, I would say. FIFA World Cup. Yeah. Should we go to Barb?
Yes, let's go to Barb. And I think we need to go a year further into the game. And you are. I just want to point out that I'm looking at the same stream as the rest of you, and it's a little bit delayed for me.
Yeah.
So you will have a few Goddag Yxskaft moments.
Yeah, it is. So this is just before Barbarossa. Uh, we have a Soviet army that is quite small, 2.5 million in field, but quite heavily equipped.
Yes, I think it's a quite qualitatively strong Soviet army.
Yeah,
Those are some expensive mountaineer divisions.
yeah, there was a lot of expensive divisions. I think he had a lot of them also. 45 light infantry divisions.
That's where the strength of the Soviets are at this stage of the game.
Yeah,
What's also interesting is that they're defending the Stalin line, but at this stage they've opted to also defend Lithuania and Estonia instead of pulling the line up towards Narva.
yeah. But this is quite standard, hiding behind the biggest rivers, I would say.
Yes, it's indeed very standard, but it's also a risky play because if you get overrun this situation, this line is weaker than the Narva line. It's also longer than the Narva line.
Yeah, and you see that on the divisions count are really low. We felt that as Axis going through, taking down 2 infantry divisions, even if they're better equipped, is quite easy, even behind rivers. It's just a little too little to be able to defend.
It's a thin line, but that's part of the charm of playing the Soviets, getting hit and getting back up.
Yeah, and you get a lot of troops when you're dying also. But it mounted a big defense against Finland here. There's a lot of troops standing up here.
I think the plan here was for the Soviets to use their very expensive light infantry divisions to knock out the Finnish player early on, which we'll see is not what's going to happen. The Finnish player is going to hold, and the Finnish player is going to do a very good game throughout through the entire game.
Yeah, I'm looking in at the templates here, and something to think about. I just want to put it in here is that the terrain modifiers are really bad for heavy artillery in forest. So all the pluses that they gained from light infantry for fighting in forest were negated from this heavy artillery. So that's a guide for another day, but thinking
Yeah,
about terrains are extremely important when designing templates.
in this case, also this goes back to terrain. They also have a very strong fort bonus, and for the first push here into Finland, the forts will be an issue for them.
Yeah, yep, that's true. Yeah, because the Finnish won the Winter War, didn't they?
They did indeed. It was a struggle, and it actually looked like a fairly easy win for the Soviets for the first few months of the war. But
Yeah.
then they got stuck and took too many losses, so the Finns could end the war on a win.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky, and if you have a good Finnish player, which we have had, yeah, you have extremely great bonuses as Finland in this mod. And right now I have a fly sitting on my head, so if I look annoyed, it's not about the stream or having Martin here. It's it's the fly. So, but something I need to look at. You played Mongolia and you built Mongolian rocket artillery, which were really effective. And
Yes, the thing about them which makes them absolutely strong, they're fairly inexpensive units. Like you can see here that they are about 11,000. They are 11,000
yeah,
production per division, which can be compared with the Soviet mountaineers clocking in at about 8,000.
yeah,
And they have some really strong stats in especially speed and soft attack.
yeah. I would say that the soft attack is fine. We have the infantry divisions with similar soft attack, but having that speed is extremely useful in this game. I love fast divisions because you can outmaneuver your enemy uh, without them being able to actually do anything but run from you.
That is true, and doing a mechanized rocket artillery build as Mongolia, you get a lot more divisions than you would as an armored Mongolia, for instance, which
Yeah,
means that you can defend your own pushes. You're not that dependent on having the Soviet player fill up the lines behind you. You can do your own pushes, take a few kills, and move back. It eases up the micro demand for the Soviet player, and it makes it easier for the Mongolian player to act independently.
yeah, and I think we've been talking about that thing in other streams too. The huge benefit of a miner being able to act independently without calling support gives a huge bonus on the map because you can micro and outmaneuver the enemy without taking micro from your co-players. So I think that was a really strong build, and it really felt here in the south of the Soviet Union when we pushed through. So, and we can look here, just check in the east. For you interested in China War, uh, we called it a day in the China War here, and we went into the console to give Japan China just to make the game fun and playable for the Asia axis.
Game health is always important.
Yeah, perhaps we should have done it earlier actually, but yeah, somewhere here it just gets ridiculous and can be game breaking if Japan gets stuck in China all day. So, what more do we have to say here? Allies have
At this
taken
stage, we
North.
can,
Yeah,
yeah, it looks like the Allies have knocked out Italians in North Africa, and as we talked about earlier, this was due to three major factors. Partly due to the very bad supply situation for the Axis here. We had German armor at maybe 20% supply, just getting overrun by Allied armor. We had two very good armor players on the Allied side, with the South Africans, as we talked about earlier, being absolutely unpennable by anything the Axis are feeling at this stage. And we also have an increasing air advantage for the Allied side, which all these things play into a situation which was very dangerous for the Axis in North Africa.
yeah, yeah. And our strategy somehow here was that since Italy lost like 800,000 troops, or did we say 700,000 here? Uh, we were talking to Spain. This is exactly where we realized that Spain had a special build, and the Allies will be able to land here because we saw him struggling with Portugal. So we went in to see what does he have, and what he had was extremely under-equipped units. And under-equipped units don't hold out against human players.
Yeah, this is important to know that let's say you have 20 divisions with 50% equipment, or you have 10 divisions with 100% equipment. The 10 divisions will be a lot stronger than the 20 divisions with 50% equipment.
Yeah. And a lot of that comes down to that you will always be able to break their defense and give that 4 times bonus attack.
There's
So,
also some extra penalties for being under equipped. Like, let's say the speed of this unit is at 1 kilometer per hour at this stage,
yeah,
which also, of course, it shouldn't be moving at 1 kilometer per hour.
no. Also, lack of fuel here, which was a problem I faced also. But yeah, so our analysis here was just retreat from everything and kill the Soviet Union. That's the way we can win the game, reinforcing the West, and perhaps take this as a win. But that was our analysis of the game at this stage, and that's what we try to do. That's why we have a Italians in Soviet Union clip from this match. So,
Okay, yeah, let's keep going. Do we have any saves like 6 months ahead, or are we a year later?
the thing I prepared was in the end, but I might have a save. Let's see. No,
Okay, let's keep going then.
uh, the end game. Yeah,
Let's
perhaps.
feel. Okay, let's go.
I didn't really save that much this game. It's from all the hot joins that we had. So, but one thing Johannes wanted us to talk about a little bit in the uh, Pacific Theater was that Siam actually managed to take uh, Singapore, and there were some fights here in. This is Borneo. Yes, it should be. No, which island is this?
The big island in the middle is Borneo.
Yeah, it's Borneo. Great. My memory doesn't help me there. So they had a little bit of fights here. The line here in Burma was just a stalemate. Nothing happened from either side. And the war at sea, I didn't think there was much of a war at sea.
I
Not
think what I remember from the Japanese talking about, there never was a major fleet engagement between Americans and the Japanese. So
no,
no, they never really fought this game.
no. So, but that's yeah. I don't know who played the US. I can't remember now.
I think it was Sarge, or was he Japan
It
actually?
was Japan. I think it was Koge and Sargon Japan.
Yeah, who was USA? Is there anyone in the audience that can help us with who played USA? That would be great.
Who was the USA? Let's move on and see if we get something from the chat. It was Sarge. Okay, you were right. I was wrong.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I thought so.
yeah. So yeah, no big fleet engagement here. So yeah. But then let's look on the European theater. I don't know if I really want to see this, but yeah. Uh, there's two pockets of resistance. I think this is like Asterix, but with two places. We have the Finns holding Berlin, quite successfully also against heavy armor troops. And we have a little bit of a pocket here in Italy holding. But I would say things went south pretty quickly when the Allied invasion of Spain took place, because it was a quick invasion.
Yes, and this is something I'd like to stay on a little bit for, because what happened here was that the axes were quite low in the entire game. Was quite low in the entire game on armored and especially mobile units in general. They had one player going mobile units, and that was Germany, and it's just not enough because as soon as the armor moves away from the Eastern Front, that lets the mobile units on the Soviet side do whatever they want.
Yeah. Yeah, and also the micro part of the whole thing. You need more players actually using the armor for them to be effective. So we had there was huge fights. We were far into the Soviet Union when the uh, Spanish fell. We diverted troops. We diverted more troops. It didn't really help since we had too few armor divisions to counter South Africa and Canada. I think it was when we retreated almost everything that we managed to stall the invasion and actually push back the Allies, almost out of Germany, I think, but at least East Germany. But then there was too much when the Soviets caught up with us and the Mongolians started to sweep in. So yeah, but I totally agree with you there that the attrition side was not to the Axis advantage.
I also want to say here that the Axis did a outstanding job in keeping the game alive until the very end. We had some really good fights in both Romania, Hungary, and throughout Poland. It's always good to see a team not losing their fighting spirit.
No, the fun thing, I think the fighting spirit was at its highest when we were fighting for the survival of the last remaining Axis players down here in Europe. So a second breath for the Axis, and I think we made quite a lot of damage actually in the late game. But yeah, look at Germany here, 7 million troops lost. So yeah,
Yeah, at this stage, I think we had, since a year back, the Germans have switched their production quite heavily onto infantry equipment, which is a build which it lets you survive longer, but it's not going to win you the game.
yeah, yeah. I think that was a wrong call. What you need in this situation, oh, not this situation, but when you're in a really bad situation, I would say mobile troops and really use them effectively. So you don't die slowly, but take some risks and hopefully get rewarded with 2, 3 big great surrounds, and then you can be up in the saddle again and back in the game. And that's something we saw last game I played Soviet. The Germans got lost a lot of armor and got D-Dayed, but they kick out kicked out 3 D-Days, and the Soviets mismanaged their tanks, so the Soviets lost 20 tanks and they were back in the game.
And those are the best games where you have these ebbs and flows going back and forth, armor pushes, people taking risks. And it's become sort of a, let's call it a dance with the people just pushing back and forth. And it's a, when HOI is at its best.
Yeah, absolutely. So, did you have anything more for today? We said before that it should be a little bit shorter after action report, not a 1 hour analysis for a Blitz game. So if you think the format is a little bit different, that's why.
And we're hoping until next analysis that the hat wielding guy will be back in his chair.
He probably will. He probably will. But should we call it a day then? 30 minutes after action report.
Unless the audience has any closing questions for us, we can call it a day.
We got
I think we're happy then.
Yeah, we got more viewers now when we're ending the stream. But yeah, it will be posted on YouTube, so you'll find this there. You can watch it on Twitch later on also. So yeah, let's call it night. Great work, Martin. See you later.
Yeah, great work and well played, everyone that took part in this Blitz game.